Good evening. So, sir, welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So, I'm very happy to introduce Mr. Srinivasan, who's speaker of today. I thank Raghunathan sir to actually who has introduced Srinivasan sir to us. Raghunathan sir last K committee spoke about KM actually. In fact, he shared one horse analogy for knowledge management. Which I used to share with a lot of people. Yeah, it's a very interesting analogy. Srinivasan sir is a chemical engineer from IIT Madras, and he did his MBA Global Management program in the University of Michigan. And after that, he has worked in the industry for over 37 years. Which includes lot of top companies like Hindustan Lever, EID, Parry, Chemplast, and VA Tech. And his experiences in areas of production, plant management, project implementation, and he has in-depth experience and expertise in fertilizers and chemicals domain, desalination, water management, energy and power efficiency domains. He is the founder of BizChem, an innovative portal that disseminates knowledge on chemicals domain. So you can see the connection of knowledge management. So he's actually tried a couple of models and actually creating some communities around knowledge sharing in his own industry experience. He's an ardent reader of management and innovation books and articles, active blogger. So very happy to note that, sir. So we are all like followers of Sukumar, and he started our blogging journey, and he's a regular speaker at management schools. Today he is kindly expected to share his experiences on how we can enable better collaboration between academy and industry by working together on projects. So thank you, sir, and over to you.
I must really thank Gopal for your kind words. Some of it I hope is true, and also for taking a lot of effort in making my coming here possible. Really, personally, I am grateful to you. Thank you very much. And basically, as he said, I am a chemical engineer, and I am a very nervous guy. And actually, when I came in, I thought my sort of nerves were cooled down when you gave me coffee, refreshment. So I was feeling comfortable. And there, sir, you came and said knowledge sharing. I am now back to being very nervous again. Because what I am going to share is more like a person who is in search of answers. So if in the process, if it stimulates some discussion, thoughts, actually I hope to be the recipient of knowledge rather than wanting to tell what I know. Okay. Talked about chemical engineering, yes, but this not this topic. Okay, what I have chosen today is that I asked Raghu. Raghu is a close friend of mine, and when he said, I said, what is the topic I should speak? He said, this is the background, therefore you choose. They give you the choice of whatever you want to speak. And most of you would have heard about the joke about chemical engineers, right? Which is, this chemical engineer as a breed, they want to talk about, given a choice of course, chemistry when they are faced with engineers, and engineering when they are faced with chemists. Now you can ask me, when both chemists and engineers are present in the hall, what happens to the chemical engineers? We talk politics. So this talk is slightly political. So what I have chosen to do is, I have tried to relate it with my past experience of being in chemical industry. And actually I had, even though I went to management and this that, I have been a hardcore engineer all throughout, and I am very pleased of being one. This is something which I personally attach a lot of satisfaction about myself, is that I was lucky, fortunate to have been able to be in the chemical industry in India during a period. But I also foresee what are the changes that are likely to occur and how well prepared in general organizations are. And as of now, I am a bit of a pessimist. Therefore, I thought I will pose some of my issues and then we can have a discussion. So I have chosen to put the topic as industry academic linkages. The examples will be from the domain where I am very familiar with, but I am sure there are some commonalities with others also. Okay. So that's the topic. Now, when there are two entities called academic and industry, generally it is understood that these two things have different functions, roles to play in life. So if they have to get together in a form of some sustainable, mutually beneficial relationship, to me it appears that like any relationship, if it has to be sustainable, both the parties must have a reasonably clear understanding of the mutual expectation. So, I have tried to put it here, either party should be very clear about the expectation, and to give a little twist, being an engineer you specify A, B, C, D in order, first to each, which means both the parties should be clear about with themselves as to what are their expectations. You have to be clear yourself first. It is not a trivial matter, you have to be clear with yourself. Secondly, you have to make it clear to the counterparty as to what your expectations from the counterparty is. Again, I think all of you will agree, it is not something that has to be assumed. It looks obvious, but I think there are many number of examples. What is obvious is often the one that leads to confusion. So, not only you are clear, you make yourself very clear to the other person what the expectations are, and once you have reached, no second guessing subsequently. This point I really have a lot of practical experience of having gone through. Something starts off, after a couple of time, each one, if they even attempt to start second guessing the other guy, then it can lead to a lot of complications. I am sure this is true for even normal human relationships themselves. And as a contingency, one should have a clear cut understanding of the exit, if it comes to that, because however much we like, probably there is a end point for all relationships, and you should be very clear what that end point is and also how to deal with that exit. So, this is the kind of a thing we are agreed. Okay. With that in mind, now I will go a little bit and say, here we are not talking about, when we say industry and academic, not between two individuals, which itself is pretty complicated as we can see, but between two organizations, and larger the organizations, you can well imagine the number of combinations and problems that comes through. So, in the industry broadly I have put two is, the first part is one important constituency or stakeholder or whatever name you give, or the board and the strategy. This must be the highest body in that organization by whatever name it goes. And the second is those guys who are most of the time involved in running the show, operational management broadly. I mean, there can be some overlap, but for ease of explanation I have split it into two. So, let us assume that industry has got within that industry two components, some guys who are really deciding on the overall strategy of the company, and the second larger group is trying to put it into practice. Getting into academia is little more trickier, because when we think of an academic institution, there must be a counter to the board of directors, which I call it as a governing board, which is that body which sort of decides the purpose, larger issues, what have you. And then the operations management equivalent is the faculty, people who take up teaching, research, whatever, and no faculty without grad student is a faculty. So, the grad students probably the guys who actually deliver, carry out the research kind of a thing. I have left out the undergraduate students who have come for a very specific purpose. They come to be taught, and at the end of the day they just acquire their degree and go. But when it comes to industry kind of involvement relations, I did not see much in terms of the involvement of the undergraduates. So, this may be debated, but that is it. So, now the point is, between the two, getting to know their responsibility, their expectations, making it clear to the other party, having exit man, at what levels these three combinations are getting worked out is what I thought we should. To start the discussions, we can probably postulate industry expectations are, at one level, people are just, you are dependent on somebody to produce quality manpower, at least at the entry levels, right. We just, I believe it is increasingly becoming a problem everywhere, but that is an important expectation that the industry has. Very few people are able to take up their own, delivering academic content to prepare people. So, that is the first expectation we can probably set out, saying that we want quality manpower at entry levels for my industry. So, that is one expectation. Second is, in your process of running the business, occasionally there are times where you require very specialized knowledge, or an equipment or a testing method or whatever it is. So, this is a once off kind of a thing. Sometimes you get this for a specific period, for a specific thing. It is not worth keeping everything within the industry, and probably you do not want to go to your competitor for that. So, therefore, look for somebody who will have that. So, that is the second requirement I have put. These two are pretty straightforward. I do not think there is any dispute. Third one is a bit dicey. What I have noticed is this consultations, because including the present institute where I am working on, there is always this industrial consultancy kind of a thing that starts. That makes me even more nervous, because the purpose of consultancy requires some clarity and understanding of that. So, I put a little bit of a question mark. Behind that is you must have a certain motivation. The first one is very clear. You do not have to elaborate on that. But for the second and especially for the third, the motivation to the industry itself, my case and my experience has been not pretty clear. So, if we go by the first slide where I had said that you have to be clear about your expectations before you go to the other party, that first part, my case is, from my experience I have found it is not always very clear. So, this is the point that I will come back. What motivates somebody from the industry within the two groups, operational management and the strategy management, to say I will have academic involvement, and for what purpose? I will come back to this slide. In terms of the academia, expectations is even harder, because generally speaking they just could not be bothered, put it very clearly, saying that have you really found, from my experience, any academic member of a community to say he has some expectation on the industry? Probably rare. So, first is they are basically interested to teach. So, I think they would have expectation to whom they should teach and to what they should teach. This is my own professor, the late Professor Indiresan of IIT Madras. He wrote many articles, most of you would know, and he made a very strong case to the political masters at that time that the academic institution must have the independence to decide what they want to teach and to who they want to teach and how they want to teach. Of course, it led to a lot of controversy, but at least he made it very clear. So, this I think is, it might be stated very bluntly, forcefully or very subtly, but the expectation of the faculty is that I need to be clear, I should have the freedom to teach what I want to teach. You do not force me to teach something. Where is the industry coming in this? I will come to that later. Second is their own interest in terms of output. They choose mostly. In the same academic institution, the research areas are chosen by the person. I mean, I think hardly somebody comes and says, you should work on this area. It is just a community that gathers together and people by word of mouth talk to everybody and drifts in, and they do that. The other expectation they may have is that they want to carry out research and they require funds. So, probably they may say that, look, my requirement from you is I will do what I like to do and you provide me the funds for carrying it out, because hardly any academic institution is able to generate their own funds, isn't it? I mean, that is. The difficult area where I have seen is defining the problem that you want to work on becomes a major issue. Most of the time the academic institutions and people, faculty, they decide what is the problem that it is of interest to them. I mean, if you are not interested, it is too bad, because I am doing the research and I choose my problem. It is fine. I think you must give it to some amount of freedom for a researcher to do what he wants to do. But given the fact that we are all living in a common society, at some point of time or other, people would have a right to ask you, oh, by the way, is there anything that you can do for me, is a very legitimate question. So, the problem definition, I have found it is very hard for the academic group themselves to decide. Governing board generally had limited itself to being the fund provider, and the easier thing is, if you are a government entity, you know, the past year's budget is a very good way to go by, and then some negotiation is done and you decide on that. There is very little is being done in terms of deciding to allocate funds in a direction in which you want the research to take place. Of course, the operating expenses I am not talking about, in terms of given the fact that you have got a number of people working there, their salary, upkeep, maintenance, blah blah blah, that is not what is being discussed. In terms of industry oriented research, taking up projects of, we hear about national importance and this and that, I believe that the governing bodies probably do not have the kind of ability or the vision to decide what is that is required to be talked about. The second can be that in terms of quality upgrading, I think industry has very clear. That way, what is the quality standards is decided by the customer, because he pays for it, otherwise he does not buy. So, the quality standards are by and large clearly understood, and you are consciously attempting to make sure that either you do not drop off or you do something superior. When it comes to academic institution, can somebody define what is the quality? It's very hard, I guess. The easiest and the most erroneous way of doing that would be the number of people who pass from the institution, because then very shortly with so many deemed universities, you can have 100% mark everywhere and you do not know what is going on. The second,
ratings for institutions. For example, I just saw a list that rates all the universities in India, and isn't that a measure of quality?
yeah, people have tried. See, for example, what they do, they take multiple things. One thing, the factor which I know of is the number of research papers published and things like that. But then I want to give it that's a good attempt to start with, but seriously asking the question of what should even be the parameters for evaluation itself is a serious thought, because I have a friend of mine who often says, you open a journal and say some paper has been published, the optimum temperature at which the can is to be opened before it is drunk can be a damn good research project, and you can publish a paper on this, and if it gets accepted in one of the peer reviewed journals, it counts as number one. But yeah, okay, there is some knowledge that has gone through that, I am not decrying. What have you done in terms of pressing the problem? Okay, so quality upgrading is a very hard question. I know, if it is so simple, it would have been done. It is a much harder question to decide what is the quality standards applicable for an academic institution, but I think some attempt has to be made. Like you start from somewhere else, okay, something is good, how to make it better, this is the attempt. Till now, I have put these two compartments, academic expectations and industry expectation. The difficulty is, the slide number 1 says there must be explicit to yourself, which itself is an issue, and you should make it very clear to the others is a bigger issue. This is where I come from. One of the common pitfalls is, and this I speak with a lot of authority, after all I come from an industry. The strategy, my case is, in most of the industries is fairly unclear, and I am restricting myself to even those industries which have a long lead time. I am not talking about kind of a place where your life cycle itself is 6 months. Then what is this big strategy that you are going to think with? Genuine point, right? What is by the time you strategize, the market is out. But I am talking about the industry which has got typically 15-20 years of life cycle. So, and you make huge capital investments. So, there is some solidity about the whole thing there. Even then, what is the strategy in which you want to conduct the business, at least in Indian industry? I have found that there is an area which requires some amount of introspection and articulation. Of course, once you introspect and you are clear about it, you have to articulate. In a lighter vein, you would all have seen people, if you ask them to say, you define your company strategy, easier thing for me is to take the book and give it to you and say, it is inside there, please read it. Very hard is for somebody to come back and say, I will now tell you what my strategy is, in simple English. In my opinion, that is the hallmark of a good strategy. If you are not able to articulate your strategy in simple terms, how anybody you expect you to implement it? So, strategy industry wise is not very clear. For that, I think the issue that goes to starting point is the persons, I showed one there, broadly speaking, people who are at the helms of the affairs, who decide the strategy, and the people who are. The guys who are operationally doing it, I am sure they have their own pluses and minuses, but after all they have got a well defined job, they are just trying to deliver it. Okay. If the energies of the top management is spent on only monitoring these guys and I have very strong views on performance evaluation anyway. If it is only spent on that, I think we are wasting our time, because when a well motivated, highly energetic, driven set of people with their pluses and minuses are trying to deliver the known results for you, somebody else has to be doing some value addition which is very differently in terms of what next, how can we prepare kind of thing. This is where the confusion comes. It is manifested when you go for interviews. I have seen from people and say, you want to select somebody there. They said, no, we look for only attitude kind. You don't look for content. To me, that is very, very strange. You must look for content. But the common conventional wisdom is that you always look for attitude. Okay, so you got a damn good, nice, sweet fellow with you. You think you can make some functional expert out of it? Very hard. I mean, maybe. I am not very optimistic. On the other hand, you may have a prima donna who has got some problems. That can be managed. I mean, people anyway mostly manage themselves. So, there are only 1 or 2 flare-ups which you have to manage, I suppose. That can be done. But therefore, this preoccupation of the industry only to be worrying about attitudes, soft skills, issues, I think in Indian industry especially is a big drag. It is high time that in order to survive in my business, I need to have this strong technical capability. Someone has to decide. It will be a controversial issue, but after you decide, you have to validate it by talking to the rest of the fellows. They may shoot it down, and at the end of it, first point, you are clear what you want. Then I think we should go to the academic institution and ask for it. Otherwise, you go to the placement office and say, show me your bright guys. This is something is a problem. Second is unwilling or unable to take calculated risk. Risk takers, everybody is supposed to take risk these days, okay? And then they qualify by saying that, no, I am not asking you to take stupid risk. As if somebody wanted to take a stupid risk. In my opinion, nobody took a stupid risk. Never. Give me one example. Everybody knows some calculation goes on in his mind. Your calculation and the other fellow's calculation differs. But that requires a little bit of a patience to understand what is he talking about and what am I talking about, some transparency and share. So, most of the time what happens, and this is a complaint which goes right to the top, is your ability to understand the future is and appreciate the future is unknown. Anyway, who knows, there are thousands of examples you can say. Even 5 months from now what is going to happen, nobody can predict with even some 60% accuracy, but the trends are possible. You may not know the specific outcome, but the trends are possible. And if your business requires on certain trends, then capturing the trend there is a huge unwillingness or probably inability. On the other hand, aggregates are always wonderful. You can talk about GDP growing at 8% and 5%. Believe me, does anybody know how the GDP translate into your business? And what is that GDP consists of? I spent some time, thanks to Michigan. GDP is supposed to be the monetary value of all the outputs. First question, engineer Dilbert asked, can you first of all know what the outputs are? And if you know, how do you know they are not double accounted? Now, at an aggregate level, numbers are always interesting. They seem to convey some great deal of input to you, but reality is all these little details which hit against each other. I am not therefore saying that you should not have a larger picture, but I think what larger picture you have has to be a sort of a trend which is supported by ground realities happening at a 200 different, 300 different places. That ability is what I think is a major issue from the industry part.
They are clear. I assume that it's usually at the senior management level. Do you have any idea as to how other countries like the American industry, how they fare compared to Indian industry? Do you have any on that particular point? I have myself observed in the US that there are examples of corporations or academia which are quite good. They are able to handle the unknown fairly well. They are fairly well organized. They do reasonably good work. They don't seem to be very totally affected by the inputs northwards. Whereas the Indian industry, from what you say and from what I've seen, seems to be somewhat not very up to it. So what is your take on it?
It's absolutely. I think it's clear. When you, of course, you can't, say all and all, but predominantly the Indian context I explained. When you go to some corporations, in Germany especially, they have a system of asking questions. Supposing they're big time money earners, for something happens and they are no longer there. If you have to cope, what will you do? Like kind of scenarios they try to build, and say from here to reach there, what all should happen in a hypothetical way, and for making it happen, what experiments we have to carry it out, who is the best fellow to carry out the experiment. Like that, almost all major chemical companies in Germany and in United States to a lesser extent, but they go to academic places or even small outfits. It can be a 3-man show. Some guys are very interested, they just say, you don't worry about anything else, up to this amount I will give you the money, no questions asked. Periodically you come back and tell me what the hell is happening, but they know every single detail of what is being attempted. They may not know the equation or the experimental setup. Like batteries, one problem about batteries is that they should store energy and then release energy, and after a couple of the cycle times they just run off. So there is a company which knows that if today, if a typical battery works for 500 cycles for example, what does it take to make it 800? Question is, we really don't know, but like this, because after 200 this failure takes place, this failure takes place, that failure takes place. So you have to look for such of those material which might be like that, kind of a general statements are put in.
Then to give a specific example, I mean, I see what you're saying, but can you pinpoint exactly as to where the problem seems to be lying in the context of Indian industry? Why isn't what you said just now, why is it not taking place in some of the Indian corporations?
The major reason could be, in an earlier slide said, that the top management, instead of only monitoring the current performance and trying to sort of either motivate or reward or punish you or what have you, they just think what happens if your business is topsy-turvy, what should be done, and for which you can't look for the answers within the company. So then they look outside. So if the number of hours that they spend outside versus inside, if you see, my take is that is very hard for the Indian top managers to let go, because there are two kinds. Again I am generalizing. One kind is this entrepreneur types. They very difficult for them to get out of the company. I am sure, because they are so emotionally bonded and so on like that, they are just so hands on. The second is guys who probably are not trained or had that exposure to see what happens. Most of the time they look inside the company. That's the whole problem.
Just one last piece. I agree. You are getting some of the things that you're saying. True. I mean, there's one way to look at it. But something fundamental in the sense that, without having to step out of the company or while still being emotionally involved in what you're doing, there are certain basic qualities that competent human beings have, thinking and feeling and stuff like that, which should be able to guide where they should go with the company and what business they should look to and stuff like that. They don't have to really go for knowledge from outside or anything like that. They can, you see what I'm trying to say, that, to evolve as a person, you don't need a lot of support from outside communities. You can do it on your own. Or some of our CEOs, are they able to do that? Are they doing it? Why are they so caught on the ordinary details of the company? I mean, why is that they lack a vision?
Yeah, see, my personal experience of, I work for so-called professional companies, which are multinationals, etc., etc. I also work with family-owned companies very closely, and the one very significant factor seems to be that even to look at it in a different way, that today things are happening well, you must have systems, procedures, controls and all that, but the basic philosophy, if it changes, if the dynamics changes, and if you still have to manage, what is that you can happen like that, you must have open-ended discussions, which means, one typical example I would give you, you talked about the personal skills. You walk into a meeting and you call for somebody and say, If somebody comes with an idea which every one of us have long held beliefs, we have a belief. If somebody comes and says, within your own company especially, have a slightly different idea, not to get offended about it. You may think you are different, I may agree, may not agree with you, but that ability to be in a very detached manner take that argument, I think somehow it may be a little bit of a cultural problem. It doesn't come so easily. It is very hard. People say, no, you are right, I am wrong.
Definitely find answers within ourselves, and probably it's a problem of sharing or either fear of getting information outside. That should be the main reasons I understand. Our growing industry and any other outside they are not really collaborating as much as outside.
Okay, see, if that were true, what would happen is if somebody says, look, I know what I am talking about, I don't have to advertise it, I don't want you also, your expertise, thank you, I think it's good. Because after all, the purpose is what? If you go back to the thing, why should anybody collaborate is, you want something. And if you are self-sufficient with you, it's fine, you are lucky and go on. But I have not found that kind of a thing also. You don't, see, the next point when you come back here, many times when it goes for engagement, you will not find the most significant man in the company trying to get involved in such kind of a thing. It is the head of the R&D who comes. And I think generally my experience is the head of the R&D has to get it cleared with the CEO before he comes and talks. So, if you are really looking at something very different to be done in terms of engagement, research, you must not be constrained. You must have that freedom for yourself and freedom for the other guy to talk. After all, you are not got into a legal arrangement yet. We are only talking about possibilities, experimentations, failure. Other pitfall that comes, industry is, I will now relate to what he said. They already have an R&D setup, for example, but somehow these guys don't trust you. And they want a second opinion. This is a real disaster. Because what happens is, first of all, it sets up a situation where any outsider who comes, let's say an academic institution or an outside consultant, whoever comes, he is resisted by the internal group, saying that what is this big guy knows that I don't know about. Probably in all fairness, about the details about that industry, about the problem, it is true also. And at the end of the day, when you have so much of resistance internally, even the best idea that comes out, it is not going to be anyway acted upon. After all, ideas don't sell. It is only finally the product and processes and services that sell. So, this is the common kind of a pitfall from the industry. I will now talk the sub story from the second side. Here the biggest issue is there is a bit of an isolation on the part of the academician. He just says, leave me alone. Second is the broad picture understanding becomes very tough. I have had this experience from when I am industry made a valiant attempt to go and talk to somebody else. We want, when the problem is described, they are just, you can see it. One particular issue is being talked about, the lights go on. Everybody says, I want to work on. But this is true only with respect to that context. So, the ability to relate to the context is an issue there. Bigger issue, first two at least I am hopeful that with something. The third issue is actually the motivations. People really do finally what they want to do, what they are motivated to do. As of now in the academic across, and this is true even in abroad, their biggest satisfaction, peer prestige, whatever comes, all the positive strokes comes to them by publications, sheer number of publications. So, if they want to spend their time on a matter which they can publish, or if they want to spend time on an industry problem which probably has some confidentiality, so you can't talk too much about it, there is a clash of interest. Then second is a little bit of cultural thing is, academic institutions are supposed to be non-hierarchical. That's the theory, but believe me, you will be surprised. Actually, somehow I felt that the industry, and increasingly as the industry matures, hierarchy is much easier to cut across in industry than in the academic institutions. This is I don't know, there is a big problem there. And about being hands-on, I have a quote for this which I will show to the next slide. What I mean by hands-on is this. I think all of you will relate to this. I will read it for you to read through. This I love. This talks about plumbing versus philosophy. Wonderful, is it? I really liked it, and to a large extent this is what goes on there. People somehow, if there is a research which is finally turns out into something which is commonplace, there is not a great deal of attraction towards that. On the other hand, if you say the quantum chromodynamics and phasors, I think there are 20 people willing to take an interest in you. If you come and say this one fails after 1000 times, you have to look at the material property, make it 1500. Routine problems, don't come to us with routine problems. This somehow becomes routine. So this is a real issue of unwillingness to get hands on, because the academic institutions, several people have tried that, industries also have said, we will give you some time off, sabbatical kind of thing. You can come and stay with us and work with the industry, just walk around, be around, observe and try to find out. It's not taking off. Of course, there are faults on either side, but it is really somehow it becomes very hard. I guess it is because industrial activity is kind of not seen as Brahminical, you know what I mean. Thinking is better than doing things. So that is a bigger issue. Then there is a last two are arising out of this. Industrial people are pressed for results, right? I think this is true. We are really pressed for results. You are under pressure. You just find that if there are 25 hours a day, there is still work comes in. Therefore, there are always at the end of the discussion will be, okay, what is the action plan? Who is going to do? By what period of time? So you are supposed to give some time limit. Okay, you are little bit flexible because everybody says next week, but we know that next week becomes week after that also, heavens are not falling, but you are supposed to give a date. This is becoming an issue because look, you are asking me for a date on a problem which is a research problem. How can I give you a date? That means we are not asking you for the end result. I am asking you what you will do for that 1 week in that activity which you said you will do. If the activity turns out to be failure, you can report back, I tried, it didn't work. It is progress. This is a huge issue. Anybody who has come, I'm in a chair where I am trying to get these two guys meet, has come back and said, oh, don't make me come again all over. The same thing will start all over the place, and then I will say, even emails are not replied back. Yeah, it's a real issue in academia. Yeah? That time value for whatever you do means something is somehow, it's just not. Okay. Now, somebody said share knowledge. No, I don't know what to share. I only shared my shop stories and all disasters. I have an approach which I will now state and then we can discuss is, in the industry I have put two ways of approaching the problem. One is, first develop this what I call as real, what we mean is competency. We are competent in something else, you understand what that competency is and make a culture of competency. Eventually on the part of everybody you should say that in an industry what is the difference between major industry? There is a return, okay? There is a sales, there is a profitability, there is cost. In academia that is not given a major importance. So if you say money making is probably more important in the industry, money making through excellence in productivity is what I define it as competency. Because I have watched Indian economy, like I said 70s onwards I have worked. At one point of time there was this planning commission which will decide whether you should set up capacity or not, because they thought productive resources should not be wasted on over capacity, and industry loved it because if you limit the capacity I can set my price. This is great. I think from that angle, money making, you can make money in 100 ways. I think these days money making is not a big issue. You only have to decide by what process you will make money. I wish people who are in the leadership positions in organizations, large organizations especially because they have got resources. My small shopkeeper and the bicycle repairer may be a different guy, but I want much higher standards of norms in the leading industries to say, I will look for excellence in productivity, because even today if some of you have read the newspaper, somebody is making out a claim, the labor laws has to be changed such that it becomes easy to sort of terminate employment in order to attract investment, I believe. So, you want to invest in the country to terminate employment. I thought you will invest in industry in order to create employment. As software industry, I am telling you from my heart, I said I am an engineer. No? Today, if people, employees in general are getting paid better, it is because of the software industry. Where there was a choice, I will work for you, I also have a choice for working for somebody else. I think you look back 30 years, 40 years back, what happened is, what you choose is the product, what you sell is the price, and you are one of the components who can be choose to come, not come is your choice. And today still that catatonia is going on, saying that we must change the labor laws. In IT industry, for example, does anybody care about labor laws? Are they not productive? Are they not making money? So, something is somewhere wrong. So, this kind of a thing, your culture of competency, your way of running business, top management should also genuinely believe research and development has a role, and they have to articulate, not ask the research director to tell you what is the research he is capable of doing. What are the products that society will want? What are the products globally you want to project? And what is it take to make the product is a hard work that group has to go through. Utopia, hopefully. Secondly, general management also should be technically savvy. This is maybe a bit of anachronism if because I think as you grow up, probably you are not so strong. I disagree. If a surgeon is 60 years old, would you consider him to be a better surgeon as compared to a person who is 30 years old? You would, right? If he is 90 years old, you wouldn't go with him. But in general, it is said that with age and experience, you become much stronger in your area of competency. Why doesn't it happen in general management? Why do people say, well, I am not an engineer, but I can sort of. This is a killer statement, because if there are younger engineers in your company, younger product developers in that company, they want to see you as a role model. Here is somebody, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, they sit and do. And that is a tremendous motivating factor, I guess. And here is people who have said that if I walk to the shop floor, it's I am not an engineer any longer, I led engineering 40 years back. So what? This is a culture of competency from part of industry if they practice it. As for academia, there must be a stronger IP climate, because everybody puts money because they don't want that hard work to be frittered away. But it is not a frivolous number game, just trying to publish and patent. You go and ask somebody, what is that you are patenting? Okay, you may not want to, and you take the patent anyway. I am not judging you, please take the patent anyway. After taking the payment, for heaven's sake, can you tell me what is that you have done? This is a real issue there. Second is to look at also how to incentivize these guys to take up something which is time bound, which is specifically giving some improvements to some areas instead of general analysis. You take a surface, project wavelength of this, you find a spectrum and publish it. Good idea. 100 of them I give it to you. 100, first one must come and say, and therefore I take that and apply to this screen and reduce the radiation coming inside the room, should be taking place. This but today there is no incentive. You can be doing that till as long as you want, you are okay. And why should anybody just go out of the way, because he may fail, he may have to take on some risk and all. So some amount of incentive. Good news is this is happening. Some academic institutions at least have got that tendency of telling the people two things. Either we give you seed money, you go and set it up yourself and try it out. Conflict of interest, all that is reasonably taken care of, no problem. You have to begin somewhere else. There, you can go to an industry of your choice, work there and come back and join here if you want to at the same seniority or whatever. So this experimentation from the side of the industry at least is happening. Of course, it has happened to a very large extent in the United States, especially MIT professors, almost all of them have a company running through, and it is, I really looked up, I think if somebody said that if you come, an Indian professor wants to wear that bag, have a unshaven thing and look intellectual, and an American professor comes in his BMW in a business suit, goes. So, some culture of incentivizing output, positive things, is what are my thoughts of how this conundrum can be sorted out. I end my speech. I hope you found it useful. I am finding it very interesting because after many years of working in the industry and saying it from that side, I now have an opportunity of sitting on this side and trying to see how to make it happen in some small extent. So, thank you very much for your attention. I will be glad to answer anything on this or any other thing thought that I would also take copious notes if you have some suggestions. See, in terms of collaboration with industry, academia has several roles. I will go back to the first one. They have several roles. I have no comments on that because you must be some competency you must have. Yeah, industry expectation. If the industry expectation was this, that I have to develop product with some cutting edge, with competitiveness, which I cannot do it within my own company. As somebody said upon, you might start up your own research center and do it, it's fine. Everything is up to you, you can decide. But again, the way knowledge is spreading is very hard for somebody to capture.
The reason why many companies, especially the IT companies, look for attitude rather than the knowledge. I think one of the slides you said you should look for knowledge rather than attitude. The reason is, if IT companies start recruiting people with knowledge, they cannot really cope up, because out of 100 people whom they recruit as freshers, only 10 to 20 are from computer science background. The remaining 80 are from non-computer science background. So they look for attitude and learnability of those people and then do it. That is from IT perspective. But my point is, even for other industries, if you have people with learnability and knowledge, learnability and attitude, because in 4 years of engineering, I don't think many people learn, much. They just get familiar with the terms in the engineering technology. That's my take.
The second part, I think my case is made. You are my advocate. But the first point, see, I didn't make a general case that you should not ignore. Sometimes you exaggerate in order to make the point is, there are several jobs in industry and all jobs are useful. Of course, some jobs have either demand supply or value addition or whatever, different payment scales are there for different roles. So, I am thinking that industry, if they have to make a difference in terms of competing with other countries, because increasingly it is becoming, within India, what will you need? You take a common one, you need a house, you need a good transportation system, clean air and water, sewages, plumbing and piping, it's an innovation, really speaking. Today we take it for granted. Many places, even today, they don't have a sewage system. So, if aren't we not supposed to take care of this? So, if you have to take care of all this, you need to do it in a much better way than what we have been doing it in the past, because then only it becomes affordable for people to do that. For that, even it can be 10 people. Okay, if you are taking 200 people every year, you may decide saying that, okay, this I will take 50, 60, for which attitude is very important, it is fine. But you must also have a clear cut strategy. I am going to look for the 10 who are really, if given a chance, going to be super winners. Even there I have found people to say, take a nice attitude fellow, yeah, dekha jayega. What? Either you must have the competence, so sure of it. I come from where I joined Hindustan Unilever as a trainee there. The chairman at that time, tough guy. So, in introduction meeting and all that, we were all thinking all this multinational, we are happy and all that. He said, look, basically, I am looking for just nice fellows. Then I know what to make out of you, because he was very clear in his mind. At that time, that company was in consumer products mainly. So, for making consumer, or I should say this, yeah, Coke. For marketing Coke, you require a high funda research. You require some Josh. I suppose. So he was very blunt about it. He said, that's what I look for. But when you are in national energy, solar energy you want to work on, you look for attitude. You look for the guy who knows what he is talking about. Nah, that is the real thing I have got. And today, money I know is not a constraint, because government of India has got funds like everybody. It is just that inability to talk business. You define your goals, I will define my goals. This is may work out, may not work out, take a call. That culture is just not happening. I think.
I believe that it is because of the process they have. As I said very rightly, that we need to publish. So one day, if all the research in the academia decides that only if your research is going to be useful in any of the industry, okay, and gives at least 100 rupees of valuation to the company, you will be rewarded as PhD. I believe that 90% of the research scholars may not get PhD at all. Why? 90% of the PhD scholars research is not used anywhere in the industry, but for the references. They have to say that my research paper is referred by another person, that is referred by another person. So many references were made, and I presented it into a national conference, international conference. I still remember one of my friends saying, what is a national conference? If one guy comes from Pondicherry to Chennai, it is a national conference. If one guy comes from Singapore to Chennai, it is an international conference. One day is enough for the international conference. So if you present it in your own college, where one day from Singapore comes, he would have come for a family visit. Okay, and that is an international conference, and yours is published. So if we make the research people accountable in terms of monitoring things, I believe that 90% of the research people will not get a PhD at all.
That is something. My cousin actually is going to work PhD just starting.
I'm not talking about your cousin, sorry.
Yeah. That's one point. And while we went through this process with a genuine guy, I've known him for quite some time. And very, very strict. And he did his MBA in Sastra. He's a very good guy. Just to set the context. The reason to it is somehow somebody, came to know that this guy people are doing PhD. A group of people approached him. Started talking about get I'm going to do PhD. Then he, interacted with them, and all the conversation, at the end of the conversation, he said, "Can we talk package?" He says that depending upon what exactly you want from me, I just fix the price. There is a price from 1 lakh to 5 lakhs. The highest 5 lakhs will be, you don't need to do anything. Just give your name and date of birth and your whatever number, and give you the PhD. Right? It must be your case. The kind of institution that you went to is different.
It's not institute. What I'm saying is, one of the primary things which I found is that industry never cares about what research you're doing. Number one. Number two, the institute in which you are actually getting engaged doesn't care about what problem you're choosing or what is the research. Take my own example. My MS research was on implementation of solar energy in Chennai. I took household sector as my research. I went to electricity board in Mount Road. I spent at least 3 months running around all the 12 floors to get data. Basic data I wanted is that how many households are there in Chennai? Number one. What is the distribution across the 5 slabs? Because I want to do a stratified population. Even that data they are not interested. I took a letter from my director to that EB director. Then other things to do. Then somehow I got some data and started my research. I was basically exploring, can we use non-conventional energy sources in household sector? What is the scope? What are the end users for which it can actually use it? Now, is my research useful or not for the government of India? It is definitely useful for the EB. But did they care about it or not? No. They don't even give basic data, number one. Number two, take my PhD target. I am doing knowledge management implementation architecture design for national laboratories. I took 3 laboratories. I spent 1.5 years in writing data. I did a project for resource. I conducted a PhD with project. Now I am giving you a
game architecture to be which can implement it in our organization, are interested or not? You are not interested. So I can give, if you give 10 examples, I can give 100 examples. Sir, in my own department, a fellow was doing a study in operations management. He took real data from Verizon, he implemented it. Verizon's basic problem was that I'm selling my products in rural areas. I don't know how much sales guys to actually position there, how much of service units I should have. It is an operations research problem. He took real data and they cooperated. It is a very good PhD thing which he did. One fellow took railways, goods scheduling he took. He implemented it. There is gave data to it. So I can give examples where there was real collaboration and the results were implemented. I can give examples of the other side also. So I think it has to be both.
That my question that I have been thinking, when the lectures that's based on the exact interesting point that you mentioned, that I'm right, you are wrong. You mentioned that. I would say that is actually the biggest issue that it actually destroys our country. Right? And I give 4 or 5 data points. And when starting an entrepreneur and try to create a product, 1%, the first thing they tell you that an entrepreneur, you are too technical and you don't have product management knowledge. Okay, fine. How many years are going to say that? 2 years, 3 years. And that time when I started, there was only 10 or 15 companies. Today there are 650 product companies. I may be stupid, he may be stupid. But can you say that all the 600 people who started a product company in India are stupid? So now, that's one point actually. Wherever you go, the other day that I went to college, similar college, I don't want to mention the name. 11 years back, I went and once gave a presentation about let's transform your education, learning to knowledge management. You know what that person said? He comes from a leading institution in India, he's retired, and he's a director of that particular institution. You know what he said? The knowledge management is good only when you're taking a mic and you talk on the stage. Other than that, it's not no use. Actually, I felt like really, thank God I was actually I wanted to destroy that person because that guy is sitting in the core point of the institution, blocking all the innovations, not just for me, and he was going to do the same thing for other people. And that guy is actually a guy who destroys industry. Now coming to industry, suppose assume that blame the industry. I mean, anything you blame, then come back, assume that industry creates a Micromax. Now how many people that will go and buy Micromax, which is 1/6 of Apple? Now how do you expect Micromax to hire PhD persons like you to go and do the innovation? Now you keep on adding more and more data, you're coming back to the issue that we have to go back, and at some point in time I think instead of blaming CEO of the company or CKO or blaming and some this caste person, that caste person, at some point I would say that I am going to assume that I am the most stupid for somebody else. Let me start the change from and started educating people and telling a lot of people that stop buying Coke, stop buying Pepsi, stop buying Lay's, stop buying everything that comes out of Pepsi, start buying Coke if you really want to. Or you go for color day, or you go for some yellow day or something else. To make sure that you have a buffet system which is made of completely Indian snacks. Now, unless otherwise you the consumer is the king. I mean, forget about the industry. The consumer, whatever you want, the industry is going to pay. Otherwise, the industry guys is doing that. So, if a consumer that you set the client that I'm going to do this, that whole thing will change for nothing. And Raju Maharaj, listen to Raju Maharaj's video. The beautifully made video. So many things he talks about the German engineering. He went and did a research and came back, and everything is linking back to warehouse. And we stupid, people, we had the brothers and our thing, we ignore it, we ridicule it, and then we go and buy a machinery from Germany. I think that fundamentally, I think we have to
understand much better because you are saying the we, so.
I won't talk about rich we. See, this is a very good point. I will now put it to say, therefore everybody kind of appreciates there is a bit of a conundrum here. There are some issues there are some issues there. the way forward, that's why I put this utopia, is one other thing, suggestion which I have found it to be useful is, see, take when we say companies, they don't decide, etc. The process in which a person becomes a CEO or he aspires to become a CEO, the factors that we use to evaluate are very different, because we are for results, okay? Square jawed, tough fellow, Jack Welch types. You deliver, then you become CEO. This is the invariably it has come through. There is a merit to it also. But there is a today, there is a tomorrow. Not always what is successful for today will become tomorrow. Up to this theory is very good, everybody is waiting. Okay, this is all told, maybe from Vada Vyasa, everybody told. But if you have to practice it, if your lifetime of working in an evaluation system, where quarterly results, you meet analysts, all somebody sticks this thing in you and say, sir, what do you expect this to come? You don't come and say, next 3 quarters, I expect there is a lot of problem going to come from there and you hope your company will work. So, culturally, we are setting up good, intelligent, talented guys to short-term performance. I don't think anything can be done, because that is the way it is.
It's like
however,
picking the mangoes from the tree, not climbing up and picking.
that's what we require, because somebody has to deliver the results. So, I have no issues, but the trick is, at some point after that operations management, what is really top management is not the CEO, I believe, because CEO is just represents the rest of the executives. He has got pressures, pulls, he has to manage. The persons who decide how the company's resources will be spent to secure the future cannot be the CEO, is what my understanding is. If I have been a very successful CEO, probably I will be a very bad chairman of the board, because if my tendency would be to say, "Main to mera period mein aise kar raha tha." Like that, I will start competing indirectly. You must be the toning. See, in our, you said no, some cultural traits are also good. In my own experience, I would have told, my elders, when I was young, they were motivating me, pushing me, etc. But at some point of time, they were also toning down. Now, that was very valuable, that you don't have to, within quotes, perform all the time. Your availability, being as a sounding board, really slowing you down if necessary, making sure your priorities are all right. It's those grand uncle to whom you can go and confide is sadly lacking. In such a competitive spirit today, can you feel like sharing with somebody else? Yeah, it's very hard. And these are matters of great importance, because you don't know whether I should go and back it up, it may fail, and then there is a big down the drain. If everything is successful, there are 1,000 people behind it. But there is always something, not for your fault. The point is, research projects fail not because somebody has made a mistake. You are exploring the unknown. Therefore, that is missing. I think Europe especially, the executive board and there is a supervisory board, they have somehow managed this reasonably well. The supervisory board actually gets too much worried if somebody is, chasing. They say, look, it looks like that you are not spending enough money on this. What happened to you? Here, why your quarterly results are not coming is the only question. This is one way. I really feel that is where we have to work.
How good is it for an Indian chemical company to handle a new product, either found from inside or found from anywhere near the academia, compared to a company in Europe? The difference. They can find markets quickly while we still produce working products.
No, sir. See, I differ from that, because see, what is the difference between Indian chemical industry?
Secondly, if suppose there is a problem in it, say it's a process problem, okay, on the third, every company, even today, in whatever they say, they will have some small nitty-gritty problems. Where do you go for solutions? You either find solutions from inside, from the team you have got, you assemble teams, you do whatever, or you go to either product companies or consultants. How often do companies approach academicians? They never do that. So you either have a consultant, and there are big consultants, and again MNCs, who are already in business, who are specialized for any problem, either operations or whatever. So they are the people who are quite radical. So there is no market at all for an industry academic collaboration in that sense unless this breaks. I'm talking about this breaks. See, as long as there are powerful product companies and powerful consultants who are almost established a cartel type of a thing, or almost established this one grip and most of the companies, there is no bigger incentive for academicians also to get into this and do it. So they find the easier route, like publish, get PhDs and then move on. So that's exactly what is happening, is my opinion.
No, you would absolutely hit the nail on the head. If you see, of the two parties, first couple of general part, this academic thing, we should, in my opinion, consider it as not the primary focus. Because eventually, they are not there to make money and make products, etc. They may play a very important role on this. So, the beneficiary is the one who should be the initiator. So, really I would put between the two little higher responsibility to them. Coming to the industry, for a lot of problems are very satisfactorily getting solved. I mean, somewhere I worked, I should take some credit also. But these are the problems of the kind, something is broken, you fix it, you do some jugaad, this kind of a reverse engineering and this sort of a thing. You said that why this is good, that so-called, I am getting back to the so-called top management is, if you go and ask McKinsey for that, you should know what problems you should go to McKinsey. McKinsey has got a value, definitely, of course they are knowledge guys, but for which problem I should go, where I think there is a confusion. Fertilizer industry, where I come from, you said no. India's chemical industry's problems are making everything in large volumes. We will find it damn tough because the raw materials are not easily available. So, and already those guys have set up huge ones. So, if you want to start all over again and put the money and compare, Reliance has done it, but it's a little hard for everybody to do. Where India has got a huge opportunity is point of applications are phenomenal, too many. People use things in a very different way, small niches. So, instead of looking at bulk, huge volumes, uniform, turned out, if there is a little bit of a customization, changing, there is a good market. You mentioned about solar. In fact, I had alternative preparation of solar I came, then I thought it was too technical. In solar energy, everybody says solar energy. In fact, one of the standard slides, I have 5 more minutes, no? I want. Yeah? Batteries are a great example. In battery, there are so many components. Even in Europe, they are struggling. Where is the fellow who will know this part? They will. But their gain is they know what they are looking for. Our guys, we want to be in profitable business. This is your strategy. I want to know, has anybody got a strategy to be an unprofitable business? I mean, come on. After some point of time, you have to be damn serious about. Nah? That happens because, again, maybe a cultural saying that in a meeting, if I stood and talked, even if you laughed at me, you laugh it internally and say, another 5 minutes now. That, hang on. What do you mean profitable? How do you intend to reach there? I will go 40% growth in 30 years, all this kind of a beautiful projections coming. Not one person within the company stops and says, this is fine, even I like it. Do you have idea how do we go about doing this? Broadly, that is where it stops. So, it is, Galbraith is a person who I like. The blind leads the blind, everybody has heard about this parable. He says, the bland leads the bland. The person who states also deals in generalities, the person who is receiving it is also dealing with generalities. Everybody has found it inconvenient to confront the issue. Things are, I think, eventually the only thing that will happen is if somebody goes out of business and all these multinationals are coming in, not because they have money, they are clear about what the hell they want. That is the biggest threat. If that happens, one way or the other, the customer will benefit. If it benefits through us, it is good. Otherwise also it is good. Thank you very much for that. So,
thank you so much. Thank you so much for the request Kumar to.
Thank you, sir. It's great.
intro to Bakshis.